It's focused on party unity. He hasn't seen the speech.
Let's catch up with all the business news of the day. Tadgh is here, and what do you have for us? Hello.
Matthew, we've got some breaking news on the Adani Group reaching us just in the last few minutes. The family trust of Gautam Adani, the Indian billionaire who established the company, has sold shares worth almost $1.9 billion in 4 of its companies. And this is the first major investment in the group after allegations were made in January of accounting fraud and stock manipulation. The company denies those allegations, but they've caused more than $130 billion to be wiped off its market value since that controversial report was published by a US-based research organisation. Now, the buyer of the shares, GQG Partners, said it believes that the long-term growth prospects for these companies are substantial. Adani Group said the transaction marks the continued confidence of global investors in the governance, management practices and growth of the Adani portfolio of companies. Now, all this news broke late in the day in India, on the same day that the country's Supreme Court announced an independent panel to investigate the allegations, the first official probe into the claims. Earlier, I spoke to our India business correspondent, Arunodhi Mukherjee, and asked about the significance of the Supreme Court's investigation.
Well, this is a story that has been dominating headlines for a while now. And one of the questions that has been asked repeatedly is whether there's going to be any kind of investigation or not. And that's why the developments coming out of the Supreme Court today are very significant. The Supreme Court setting up that 5-member independent panel headed by a former Supreme Court judge. It will also have senior members of the banking sector as well. Former members of the banking sector with their expertise will be in that panel. They're supposed to give their report back to the Supreme Court in 2 months' time. The Supreme Court has also asked India's market regulator to look into any kind of lapses in securities law and also regulatory disclosures as well. What's also significant is the constitution of this independent panel, because the last time, in the last hearing, the Supreme Court had rejected the recommendations of the federal government of the names of this panel, saying that if they were to accept the names given by the government, then that would be tantamount to it being a government panel. And that's why the Supreme Court has put forth its own names, and it will be delving into this investigation. I remember ever since those allegations came out, which have been completely denied by the Adani Group, we've seen the Adani Group and its businesses lose over $100 billion in market value. And it's really triggered a huge shock in the Indian markets as well.
And indeed, the Adani Group itself has welcomed the Supreme Court's intervention, saying it believes that the truth will prevail. Is that a universally held view that the Supreme Court will get to this panel, will get to the bottom of it?
Well, there is certainly hope, because the Supreme Court, headed by the Chief Justice of India, was actually hearing this matter today. And this is based on a lot of petitions that were filed by lawyers as well as politicians, because this has not only been playing out in the business circles, it has been playing out politically as well, with members of India's opposition asking for a thorough investigation. In fact, many of them also asking for a parliamentary investigation. While this is not a parliamentary investigation, it is an independent panel looking into the allegations. It is still something for the opposition to go ahead with. So remember, this is for a very long time, India's political opposition has alleged that Gautam Adani has benefited in his business because of his proximity to the ruling Bharatiya Janata Party and the Prime Minister Narendra Modi himself. Allegations that both Gautam Adani and the BJP have always denied. So this is certainly as much a business story as it is a big political one.
Arunodhi Mukherjee speaking to me earlier there. Now, the electric car maker Tesla has been making its annual presentation to investors, with its controversial boss, Elon Musk, taking the spotlight once again. The firm had promised details of a much cheaper next-generation electric vehicle, but we didn't get that. What we did get was a sweeping vision from the boss of a future economy powered by renewable electricity and vast amounts of battery storage that he said could replace inefficient fossil fuels. The bill for this plan will accrue $10 trillion worth of investment.
There's a clear path to a fully sustainable Earth with abundance. In fact, you could support a civilization much bigger than Earth, than much more than the 8 billion humans could actually be supported sustainably on Earth. And I'm I'm just often shocked and surprised by how few people realize this.
Big ideas as ever there from Elon Musk. Earlier we heard from Dan Ives, a managing director at Wedbush Securities in New York. So did he think investors got what they were hoping for?
Look, I think investors are hoping for more meat on the bones. They wanted to see a sub $30,000 car introduced because that's really key to hitting the masses. I mean, they laid the groundwork, but ultimately the vision's there. I think investors will be a little disappointed that there was no cheaper automobile announced. Because ultimately, to go to the masses, to have 3-4 million plus vehicles per year, you need a cheaper car. And that's really the holy grail for Tesla. The foundation's there. They continue to really own the market in terms of electric vehicles. It was a great day. But ultimately, investors wanted more in terms of that cheaper vehicle. That was the key. I mean, Tesla does play a big role, especially in electric vehicles. And of course, on the storage side, from an energy perspective. But look, there needs to be a lot of buy-in in terms of from other countries and globally, but this lays the groundwork.
In other business today, inflation in countries using the euro currency dropped to 8.5% in February. The fall was not as big as many economists had expected, though, and that's fueling expectations that the European Central Bank will raise interest rates several more times this year. ECB President Christine Lagarde said that inflation was on track to fall much more in March due to the effects of year-on-year comparisons in comparison to last year's high energy prices. A US regulator has found that Starbucks illegally fired 6 workers in New York for being members of a trade union. The US National Labor Relations Board said the coffee chain committed egregious and widespread violations of federal labor law at its stores in Buffalo and Rochester. It ordered that the fired workers be rehired. Starbucks maintains its actions were lawful and in line with policies. And the crack cocaine of algorithms, that's how one campaigner has described the addictive quality of TikTok. Well, the Chinese-owned video sharing app has more than 1 billion users worldwide, many in their teens. So it's announced plans to limit its use by under 18s to just 60 minutes a day, saying the measure will be rolled out in the coming weeks. Users, though, will have the ability to opt out. And that's your business here on Global. Back to you now, Matthew.
Time limits. Good luck with that, Tadgh. Thanks very much. Now, still to come on today's Global, more secrets of the Great Pyramid of Giza are revealed as a secret corridor is found in the structure. It is seen for the first time by archaeologists.